String title. There we go. And start streaming. It looks like it is working. Yay! Yay! You're back from your mobile sojourn. Wonderful. Hello, hello. Hello, YouTube. We are back. It has been, I think, a week. I think it's been a week since we went live to read on YouTube, and that is because Halloween has kept us very busy. There's been a lot of stuff going on over on the Twitch side. However, it is good to be back to our regular reading schedule. Hello, Sean. Over on the YouTube. Let me switch over to the multi-chat so that I can see messages coming in from both sides. Alright. We are going to be returning to the novella that we started like a weekish ago, which is The Room in the Dragon Volant by Sheridan le Fanu. And we've read the first several chapters. We are going to be starting chapter 11 tonight, and then we'll see how many we get through. But let's try to recap. I think it'll be useful even for those of us who have been there for the previous chapters, just to remember what is going on. We had a character, Richard Beckett, who is a arrogant, handsome, wealthy young Englishman, and the war has just ended between the British and the French, and he just came into a large inheritance and has decided, let's go on a trip to Paris. Black Dragon, welcome in. Hello, Raiders. Hello, Raiders. Raiders over on Twitch. Hello, hello. Welcome in. Wonderful timing. We are just getting started on our reading segment for the night, and we're just recapping because we kind of put this novella aside for a few streams over Halloween, but we are returning to it now. Voodoo Owl, thank you for the follow. Hello. We are returning to reading The Room in the Dragon Volant by Sheridan le Fanu, which was from his collection that we were reading over October. The collection is called In a Glass Darkly, but you can also find this novella as a separate download. And Sean has actually posted the link in both the YouTube and the Twitch chats to Project Gutenberg, where you can download that specific story, or just open it in a browser tab if you want to read along and, you know, catch every time that I make a tiny mistake and judge me for it. Now this one, it is a bit of a continuation, I guess, in some ways, of our spooky season, but I have heard that this story is more of mystery vibes rather than traditional horror, and so far certainly it hasn't felt like a horror book. We're 10 chapters in. That I never make an error. The link didn't work. Let me know if I need to repost it. But yes, welcome in everyone from the tavern. You guys make sure, over on Twitch, make sure you are following Black Dragon Tavern Gaming. They are so freaking cozy and kind. They also do storytelling, and reading and singing. It's a husband and wife duo, and they are so awesome. Make sure you're dropping that follow. Welcome in, Raiders from the tavern. Feel free to get cozy. Okay, alright, that's a lot. I haven't even started reading. You need to delay your judgment for when I start reading. I can pin the comment? Really? Yes, I can. on YouTube. We are still learning the ropes of YouTube live streaming. Thank you, Fitch. Thank you. Aw, thank you, Black Dragon. Shay, enjoy your lurk. Okay, so we are trying to remember what was going on. We've got Richard Beckett. He is a handsome, arrogant stalker. Very wealthy. He's taking a trip in Paris, which I feel like if my country was coming out the other end of like a war and then it ended, my first impulse wouldn't be to like go on vacation to the country that had just lost the I feel like that in and of itself is like indicative of Richard's mindset. But anyways, on the road he meets with a very attractive young lady and proceeds to stalk her. He has his carriage follow her carriage until they pull up at an inn. He pulls up at the same inn. He just wanders into her room and stares at her, and she tells him to leave, and he interprets this as, ooh, she's into me. He makes friends with a man who says he's the Marquis. A Marquis. Is he? Oh, the lady he's stalking, she's a countess, and she is in fact traveling with her husband, the count. There's enough of an age gap that at first he didn't know if it was his daughter or his wife, but he learns that it is his wife, and this does not discourage him. Anyways, they take off from the inn the next day, the count and countess, and so Richard thinks, okay, well, I need to get to Paris because they are headed to Paris, and the trouble is that he's unable to find any horses. But then the Marquis, who, like, we don't have proof that he's a Marquis, but what he has told Richard is to pretend like he's not. He says, like, just call me, oh gosh, what is he getting called? Monsieur Roquelier or something. He's pretending that he's not a Marquis for a while. He says that he is going back to Paris, but people in Paris aren't allowed to know that he is back there. So he's going under a false name. But Richard catches a ride, and they're traveling together to Paris. And as they're traveling, Richard, they stop for some, like, coffee at, like, what sounded kind of like a drive-through, which is crazy. Apparently, like, they rode past some, like, cafe or something, and just took the whole, like, the cups and the platter with them in their carriage. And when they were done drinking their tea, they just, like, threw the platter and cups out the window. Apparently that was a thing. Monsieur Troqueville. Yeah, thank you. And a little while after this, Richard finds out that he can't move. He is paralyzed. He can't speak. He can't move. The Marquis thinks he's asleep, or at least is acting like he thinks he's asleep. They stop at an inn temporarily, not to stay the night, but just to, like, refresh some things. And the Marquis says, oh, let's let Richard sleep, and takes Richard's servant with him into the inn to, like, I think they're changing horses. And while those two are away from the carriage, thinking that Richard is just fast asleep, but actually he's paralyzed and can see everything going on, a strange man gets into the carriage, goes through his pockets, takes out a packet that has all these personal letters in it, reads through them, and then replaces them. So it's not a robbery. He doesn't steal things, but he reads all this information. Now, So far, we genuinely don't know if this was set up or not by the Marquis. It is very suspicious. We also know that Richard was stupid enough to tell the Marquis that he had just inherited the equivalent of like millions of dollars at the time. So very suspicious. Eventually he like gets unparalyzed and he tells the Marquis about it, and the Marquis is, concerned. The Marquis sets him up with a place to stay in London, and he's acting very suspicious. He's saying, don't use any of your letters of introduction. Let me introduce you to people in society, but of course you'll have to wait a few weeks because I'm not supposed to be in town, which is just very controlling. Don't go this place, don't go that place until I'm able to go with you. And Richard is like, and especially do not gamble until I'm able to like bring you around. How it's reading, and we were talking about this, it's reading very much like he's trying to make sure that this impetuous young man doesn't spend his fortune or gamble away his fortune before maybe he has a chance to get his hands on it. But we don't know this yet. There's no proof of it yet. This is just how it's seeming. Now, the Marquis hears... So, Richard still wants to find the Countess, who he's pretty sure is in London. The Marquis tells him about a masquerade that is happening at Versailles, right? Isn't it at Versailles? And he's like, hey, let's go together and let's have like a couple's costume. And we'll each wear a symbol so that we can like recognize each other, but otherwise our costumes will be the same. Again, raising some red flags. Richard is not clever. So it's very last minute. Richard's trying to get a room. He can't find a room. It's all booked up. It's a huge event. And then the Marquis arrives and is like, oh, I know just the place. And he has just led him up to the Dragon Volant, the titular inn. So, like, literally the chapter we're about to start reading is called The Dragon Volant, and it is Richard's first impressions of this inn. And so he's supposed to stay there. He's supposed to meet up with the Marquis at the ball wearing the same costume, except for they'll each have like a small pin that's slightly different, which to me just screams nonsense is about to happen. Hi, Tyra. A bal masqué conducted, it is said, with more than usual splendor. It takes place at Versailles. All the world will be there. Yeah. Yeah, the Flying Dragon Inn. Yeah. And I think it said that there was some disrepair, but also that it was like kind of charming. Anyways. Sorry, that was kind of a long recap, but I felt like that was important because it's been like a weekish, more than a week, since we've read this story, and I think it was important to touch on those points again. Oh, I'm glad that was helpful. I'm glad that was helpful. Okay. All right. So if you are following along, we are about to start with chapter 11. You'd forgotten most of that? I mean, it kind of just came back to me as I was retelling it, so it was helpful for me too. Okay. All right. Chapter 11. The Dragon Volant. I took one look about me. The building was picturesque. The trees made it more so. The antique and sequestered character of the scene contrasted strangely with the glare and bustle of Parisian life to which my eye and ear had become accustomed. Then I examined the gorgeous old sign for a minute or two. Next, I surveyed the exterior of the house more carefully. It was large and solid, and squared more with my ideas of an ancient English hostelry, such as the Canterbury Pilgrims might have put up at, than a French house of entertainment, except, indeed, for a round turret that rose at the left flank of the house and terminated in the extinguisher-shaped roof that suggests a French chateau. I entered and announced myself as Monsieur Beckett, for whom a room had been taken. I was received with all the consideration due to an English milord, with, of course, an unfathomable purse. My host conducted me to my apartment. It was a large room, a little somber, panelled with dark wainscoting and furnished in a stately and somber style long out of date. There was a wide hearth and a heavy mantelpiece carved with shields, in which I might, had I been curious enough, have discovered a correspondence with the heraldry on the outer walls. There was something interesting, melancholy, and even depressing in all this. I went to the stone-shafted window and looked out upon a small park with a thick wood forming the background of a chateau which presented a cluster of such conical-topped turrets as I have just now mentioned. The wood and chateau were melancholy objects. They showed signs of neglect and almost of decay, and the gloom of fallen grandeur and a certain air of desertion hung oppressively over the scene. I asked my host the name of the chateau. "That, monsieur, is the Chateau de la Carque," he answered. Oh my god, I forgot that I've been doing French accents for this. Literally until this moment, I forgot that I've been trying to do... Okay, so, prerequisite, obligatory apology to the French for my terrible French accent. It is not meant to be offensive. I'm doing my best. Chateau de la Carque. Carque. C-A-R-Q-U-E. It is a pity it is so neglected, I observed. I should say, perhaps, a pity that its proprietor is not more wealthy? Perhaps so, monsieur. Perhaps, I repeated, and looked at him. Then I suppose he is not very popular. Neither one thing nor the other, monsieur, he answered. I meant only that we could not tell what use he might make of riches. It's not meant to be offensive, it's just accidentally offensive. I'm doing my best. I'm so sorry. Oh no. And who is he? I inquired. The Count de Saint-Alyre. Oh, wait, that's the Count. The Count that he's been stalking his wife. Oh shit, okay. Sorry. I mean, honestly, I should also offer up, apologies for my terrible hint at a British accent for Richard as well. She's only been Canadian a little while. It doesn't matter. Canadian French accents are not the same anyways, so... Okay. Oh, the Count. You're quite sure? I asked, very eagerly. It was now the innkeeper's turn to look at me. Quite sure, monsieur. The Count de Saint-Alyre. Do you see much of him in this part of the world? Not a great deal, monsieur. He is often absent for a considerable time. Okay. I'm hoping this is gonna warm up for me. Oh, it's Nomad! Oh my goodness. Hi, David. Hi. So good to see you. And Is he poor? I inquired. I pay rent to him for this house. It is not much, but I find he cannot wait long for it, he replied, smiling satirically. From what I have heard, however, I should think he cannot be very poor, I continued. They say, monsieur, he plays. I know not. He certainly is not rich. About 7 months ago, a relation of his died in a distant place. His body was sent to the Count's house here, and by him buried in Père Lachaise, as the poor gentleman had desired. The Count was in profound affliction, although he got a handsome legacy, they say, by that death. But money never seems to do him good for any time. He is old, I believe. Old. We call him the Wandering Jew, except indeed that he has not always the 5 sous in his pocket. Yet, monsieur, his courage does not fail him. He has taken a young and handsome wife. And she, I urged, is the Countess de Saint-Alyre. Yes, but I fancy we may say something more. She has attributes? 3, monsieur, 3, at least most amiable. Ah, and what are they? Get your mind out of the gutter, chat. And what are they? Youth, beauty, and diamonds. I laughed. The sly old gentleman was foiling my curiosity. I see, my friend, said I. You are reluctant to quarrel with the Count, he concluded. True. You see, monsieur, he could vex me in 2 or 3 ways. So could I him. But on the whole, it is better each to mind his business and to maintain peaceful relations. You understand? It was, therefore, no use trying, at least for the present. Perhaps he had nothing to relate. Should I think differently by and by, I could try the effect of a few Napoleons. Perhaps he meant to extract them. The host of the Dragon Volant was an elderly man, thin, bronzed, intelligent, and with an air of decision perfectly military. I learned afterwards that he had served under Napoleon in his early Italian campaigns. One question I think you may answer, I said, without risking a quarrel. Is the Count at home? He has many homes, I conjecture, said the host evasively. But I think I may say, monsieur, that he is, I believe, at present, staying at the Château de la Carque. I looked out of the window, more interested than ever, across the undulating grounds to the chateau with its gloomy background of foliage. I saw him today in his carriage at Versailles, I said. Very natural. Then his carriage and horses and servants are at the chateau? The carriage he puts up here, monsieur, and the servants are hired for the occasion. There is but one who sleeps at the chateau. Such a life must be terrifying for Madame the Countess, he replied. The old screw, I thought. By this torture, he hopes to extract her diamonds. What a life! What fiends to contend with! Jealousy and extortion. The knight, having made his speech to himself, cast his eyes once more upon the enchanter's castle and heaved a gentle sigh, a sigh of longing, of resolution, and of love. Bro, you don't know her. You don't know her. What a fool I was. And yet, in the sight of angels, are we any wiser as we grow older? It seems to me only that our illusions change as we go on, but still, we are madmen all the same. Well, St. Clair, said I, as my servant entered and began to arrange my things. You've got a bed? In the cockloft, monsieur, among the spiders, and par ma foi, the cats and the owls. But we agree very well. Vive la bagatelle. I had no idea it was so full. Or chiefly the servants, monsieur, of those persons who were fortunate enough to get apartments at Versailles. And what do you think of the Dragon Volant? The Dragon Volant? Monsieur, the old fiery dragon, the devil himself, if all is true. On the faith of a Christian, monsieur, they say that diabolical miracles have taken place in this house. What do you mean? Revenants? Oh, not at all, sir. I wish it was no worse. Revenant? No. People who have never returned, who vanished before the eyes of half a dozen men, all looking at them. What do you mean, St. Clair? Let us hear the story, or miracle, or whatever it is. It is only this, monsieur, that an ex-master of the horse of the late king, who lost his head, monsieur will have the goodness to recollect in the Revolution, being permitted by the emperor to return to France, lived here, in this hotel, for a month, and at the end of that time vanished, visibly, as I told you, before the faces of half a dozen credible witnesses. The other was a Russian nobleman, 6 feet high and upwards, who was standing in the center of the room downstairs, describing to 7 gentlemen of unquestionable veracity the last moments of Peter the Great, and having a glass of eau-de-vie in his left hand and his tasse de café nearly finished in his right, in like manner vanished. His boots were found on the floor where he had been standing, and the gentleman at his right found, to his astonishment, his cup of coffee in his fingers, and the gentleman at his left, his glass of eau-de-vie, which he swallowed in his confusion, I suggested. Crazy Kitten and Mute Maxwell, welcome and thank you for the follows. I'm guessing eau-de-vie is going to be whiskey, because whiskey does come from the Gaelic words uishkaba, which means water of life, and eau-de-vie is French for water of life, so I'm guessing he's got whiskey in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. Is guessing. Also, hi, Starchives. Reading My Immortal. Okay. Which he swallowed in his confusion, I suggested. Which was preserved for 3 years among the curious articles of this house, and was broken by the curé while conversing with Mademoiselle Vidon in the housekeeper's room. But of the Russian nobleman himself, nothing more was ever seen or heard. Parbleu, when we go out at the Dragon Volant, I hope it may be by the door. I heard all this, monsieur, from the postilion who drove us. Well, then it must be true, said I, jocularly. But I was beginning to feel the gloom of the view, and of the chamber in which I stood. There had stolen over me, I know not how, a presentiment of evil, and my joke was with an effort, and my spirit flagged. End of chapter. Alright, so he learns that the woman he's stalking, I'm not going to sugarcoat this, man. The woman he's stalking that she is staying in the castle that he can see from his window. And in fact, the inn that he's staying on is part of that estate and is being rented out to the innkeeper to use as an inn. I enjoy all the voices you do for them. Thank you. I'm doing my best. We also learn from Richard's servant that there are stories about people disappearing in this inn, and not just like, oh, they went to bed and then they weren't there the next morning, like literally vanishing in front of people's eyes. So, and all these old ghost stories, the servants are always so much smarter than the protagonists. I mean, it makes sense, right? It makes sense. Postilion is a person who rides a harnessed horse that is pulling a horse-drawn vehicle, such as a coach, rather than driving from behind as a coachman does, for your own benefit and anyone else's. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. All right. Chapter 12. The Magician. No more brilliant spectacle than this masked ball could be imagined. Among other salons and galleries thrown open was the enormous perspective of the Grande Galerie des Glaces, lighted up on that occasion with no less than 4,000 wax candles, reflected and repeated by all the mirrors, so that the effect was almost dazzling. The grand suite of salons was thronged with masks in every conceivable costume. There was not a single room deserted. Every place was animated with music, voices, brilliant colors, flashing jewels, the hilarity of extemporized comedy, and all the spirited incidents of a cleverly sustained masquerade. I had never seen before anything in the least comparable to this magnificent fete. I moved along indolently in my domino and mask, loitering now and then to enjoy a clever dialogue, a farcical song, or an amusing monologue, but at the same time keeping my eyes about me, lest my friend in the black domino, with the little white cross on its breast, should pass me by. I had delayed and looked about me, specially, at every door I passed, as the Marquis and I had agreed, but he had not yet appeared. While I was thus employed, in the very luxury of lazy amusement, I saw a gilded sedan chair, or rather a Chinese palanquin, exhibiting the fantastic exuberance of celestial decoration, borne forward on gilded poles by 4 richly dressed Chinese. One with a wand in his hand marched in front, and another behind, and a slight and solemn man, with a long black beard, a tall fez, such as a dervish is represented as wearing, walked close to its side. A strangely embroidered robe fell over his shoulders, covered with hieroglyphic symbols. The embroidery was in black and gold upon a variegated ground of brilliant colors. The robe was bound about his waist with a broad belt of gold, with Kabbalistic devices traced on it in dark red and black. Red stockings and shoes embroidered with gold, and pointed and curved upward at the toes in oriental fashion, appeared below the skirt of the robe. The man's face was dark, fixed, and solemn, and his eyebrows black and enormously heavy. He carried a singular-looking book under his arm, a wand of polished black wood in his other hand, and walked with his chin sunk on his breast and his eyes fixed upon the floor. The man in front waved his wand right and left to clear the way for the advancing palanquin, the curtains of which were closed, and there was something so singular, strange, and solemn about the whole thing that I felt at once interested. I was very well pleased when I saw the bearers set down their burden within a few yards of the spot on which I stood. The bearers and the men with the gilded wands forthwith clapped their hands and in silence danced round the palanquin, a curious and half-frantic dance, which was yet, as to figures and postures, perfectly methodical. This was soon accompanied by a clapping of hands and a ha-haing rhythmically delivered. While the dance was going on, a hand was lightly laid on my arm, and looking round, a black domino with a white cross stood before me. "I am so glad to have found you," said the Marquis, "and at this moment, this is the best group in the rooms. You must speak to the wizard. About an hour ago I lighted upon them in another salon and consulted the oracle by putting questions. I was never more amazed. Although his answers were a little disguised, it was soon perfectly plain that he knew every detail about the business, which no one on earth had heard of but myself, and 2 or 3 other men, about the most cautious persons in France. I shall never forget the shock. I saw other people who consulted them, evidently as much surprised and more frightened than I. Well, I came with the Count de Saint-Elier and the Countess." He nodded toward a thin figure, also in a domino. It was the Count. "Come," he said to me, "I'll introduce you." I followed, you may suppose, readily enough. The Marquis presented me with a very prettily turned allusion to my fortunate intervention in his favor at the Belle Étoile, and the Count overwhelmed me with polite speeches and ended by saying, what pleased me better still, "The Countess is near us, in the next salon but one, chatting with our old friend, the Duchess d'Argensac. I shall go for her in a few minutes, and when I bring her here, she shall make your acquaintance. And thank you also for your assistance, rendered with so much courage when we were so very disagreeably interrupted." "Oh, you must positively speak with the magician," said the Marquis to the Count de Saint-Elier. "You will be so much amazed. No, sorry. You will be so much amused. I did so, and I assure you I could not have anticipated such answers. I don't know what to believe." "Really? Then by all means let us try," he replied. Sounds like a good cold reader. Oh, thank you. Yes, so this I left out, but when the Count and Countess were trying to leave the first inn that they stayed at, the Belle Étoile, this other character who was staying at the inn was very drunk and like dancing around with a sword and threatening the Count's life, and Richard stepped in and knocked him unconscious and allowed the Count and Countess to leave. So the Count has met him before, but they haven't had a formal introduction ever. So the Marquis is doing the formal introduction, but they have spoken. And the Count, I mean, at this point, Richard has rendered him a service twice. Once when the Count's carriage broke down on the road, and then once in, like, knocking out this crazy man who was challenging him at the end. So, the Duchess. We 3 approached, together, the side of the palanquin, at which the black-bearded magician stood. A young man in a Spanish dress, who, with a friend at his side, had just conferred with the conjurer, was saying, as he passed us by, "Ingenious mystification. Who is that in the palanquin? He seems to know everybody." The Count, in his mask and domino, moved along, stiffly, with us, toward the palanquin. A clear circle was maintained by the Chinese attendants, and the spectators crowded round in a ring. One of these men, he who with a gilded wand had preceded the procession, advanced, extending his empty hand, palm upward. Money? Inquired the Count. Gold, replied the usher. The Count placed a piece of money in his hand, and I and the Marquis were each called on in turn to do likewise as we entered the circle. We paid accordingly. The conjurer stood beside the palanquin, its silk curtain in his hand, his chin sunk, with its long jet-black beard on his chest, the outer hand grasping the black wand on which he leaned. His eyes were lowered as before to the ground. His face looked absolutely lifeless. Indeed, I never saw face or figure so moveless, except in death. The first question the Count put was, "Am I married or unmarried?" The conjurer drew back the curtain quickly and placed his ear towards a richly dressed Chinese who sat in the litter, withdrew his head and closed the curtain again, and then answered, "Yes." There's not a yes or no question. Good night, Champy, sleep well. The same preliminary was observed each time, so that the man with the black wand presented himself, not as a prophet, but as a medium, and answered, as it seemed, in the words of a greater than himself. 2 or 3 questions followed, the answers to which seemed to amuse the Marquis very much, but the point of which I could not see, for I knew next to nothing of the Count's peculiarities and adventures. "Does my wife love me?" asked he, playfully. "As well you deserve." "Whom do I love best in the world?" "Self." "Oh, that I fancy is pretty much the case with everyone. But putting myself out of the question, do I love anything on earth better than my wife?" "Her diamonds." "Oh," said the Count. The Marquis, I could see, laughed. "Is it true," said the Count, changing the conversation peremptorily, "that there has been a battle in Naples?" "No, in France." "Indeed," said the Count, satirically, with a glance round. "And may I inquire between what powers, and on what particular quarrel?" "Between the Count and Countess de Saint-Alyre, and about a document they subscribed on the 25th July, 1811. The Marquis afterwards told me that this was the date of their marriage settlement. The Count stood stock still for a minute or two, and one could fancy that they saw his face flushing through his mask. Nobody but we two knew that the inquirer was the Count de Saint-Alyre. I thought he was puzzled to find a subject for his next question, and perhaps repented having entangled himself in such a colloquy. If so, he was relieved, for the Marquis, touching his arms, whispered, "Look to your right and see who is coming." I looked in the direction indicated by the Marquis, and I saw a gaunt figure stalking toward us. It was not a mask. The face was broad, scarred, and white. In a word, it was the ugly face of Colonel Gaillard, who, in the costume of a corporal of the Imperial Guard, with his left arm so adjusted as to look like a stump, leaving the lower part of the coat sleeve empty and pinned up to the breast. There were strips of very real sticking plaster across his eyebrow and temple, where my stick had left its mark, to score hereafter among the more honorable scars of war. End of chapter. So that is the men that attacked the Countess Centelier at the Belle Étoile that Richard knocked out. We don't know their full history, but we know that Gaillard hates the Count. We know that Gaillard is also has been in like multiple wars and is like infamously hard to kill. And the reason why he's apparently so pallid white is because some weeks ago he like was injured so badly, he lost so much blood that he's basically white at this point. Oh really, Muse? You got this. You got this. Now, I wonder if Gaillard, he is walking straight towards them, but they are in costume. Does Gaillard know who they are? Also kind of crazy that the Count got called out for liking his wife's diamonds. Alright. Shall we read the next one? Chapter 13. The Oracle Tells Me Wonders. I forgot for a moment how impervious my mask and domino were to the hard stare of the old campaigner, and was preparing for an animated scuffle. It was only for a moment, of course, but the Count cautiously drew a little back as the gasconading corporal in blue uniform, white vest, and white gaiters, for my friend Gaillard was as loud and swaggering in his assumed character as in his real one, as a colonel of dragoons, drew near. Gasconading. Gascon refers to, like, coming from a certain region of France, right? Wasn't, D'Artagnan in The Three Musketeers, wasn't he a Gascon? From Gascony? Am I mixing things up, or? Are they back in Paris? They're currently at Versailles, yeah. So they're not in like the city center of Paris, but yeah, which is why they have to stay at an inn. But I haven't seen it in this form, gasconading. But surely that must be from the same. I kind of want to look this up. Oh wow, it means bragging or boasting, to praise or express pride in one's own possessions, qualities, or accomplishments. But that must come from Gascon, right? No, I'm trying to remember from when we read The Three Musketeers, like, there were some, like, the Gascons were considered a certain way, right? Like, let's check the OED. Sorry, I love etymology. The first use in writing is in the writing of Daniel Defoe. They were a part of Spain that was traded to France. Yeah, they were like, the way that it seemed to be in The Three Musketeers, they were considered quite provincial, right? But then the Gascons considered the Parisians to be all like snooty and too like concerned with manners. Gasconade, from Gasconnet to boast, from Gascon, boaster. Wow. So I think it's kind of synonymous, like being a Gascon became synonymous with being a boaster. Oh yeah, D'Artagnan was like very provincial and rough around the edges. He had to be taught like courtly manners and everything, right? So, dang, that's pretty cutting. Yeah. Okay. No one shoots like Gascon. Okay. Sorry for that detour. I love etymology and had to double check that one. Okay. So in this context, it doesn't mean that he's from Gascony. It just means that he is bloviating. Alright. It comes up in almost every story about France that you've ever read. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Alright, okay. Either way, Gaillard is walking up to them. He had already twice... Wait. He had already twice all but got himself turned out of doors for vaunting the exploits of Napoleon le Grand in terrific mock heroics, and had very nearly come to hand grips with a Prussian hussar. In fact, he would have been involved in several sanguinary rows already, had not his discretion reminded him that the object of his coming there at all, namely to arrange a meeting with an affluent widow on whom he believed he had made a tender impression, would not have been promoted by his premature removal from the festive scene of which he was an ornament, in charge of a couple of gendarmes. Gendarmes are like police or soldiers. Okay, so he's there to meet a wealthy widow. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out who is... Okay, this is Gaillard speaking.
Money, gold, bah! What money can a wounded soldier, like your humble servant, have amassed, with but his sword hand left, which, being necessarily occupied, places not a finger at his command with which to scrape together the spoils of a routed enemy?
No gold from him, said the magician. His scars frank him.
Bravo, monsieur le prophète! Bravissimo! Here I am. Shall I begin, mon sorcière, without further loss of time, to question you?
Without waiting for a moment, he commenced, in stentorian tones. After half a dozen questions and answers, he asked,
Whom do I pursue at present?
2 persons.
Ah, 2? Well, who are they?
An Englishman, whom if you catch, he will kill you. And a French widow, whom if you find, she will spit in your face.
Monsieur le magicien calls a spade, and knows that his cloth protects him. No matter. Why do I pursue them?
The widow has inflicted a wound upon your heart, and the Englishman a wound upon your head. They are each, separately, too strong for you. Take care your pursuit does not unite them.
Bah, how could that be?
The Englishman protects ladies. He has got that fact into your head. The widow, if she sees, will marry him. It takes some time, she will reflect,
to become a colonel, and the Englishman is unquestionably young. Well, I will cut his coxcomb for him, he ejaculated with an oath and a grin. And in a softer tone he asked, "Where is she?" "Near enough to be offended if you fail." "Oh, so she ought, by my faith." "You are right, Monsieur le Prophète. 100,000 thanks. Farewell." And staring about him and stretching his lank neck as high as he could, he strode away with his scars and white waistcoat and gaiters and his bearskin shako. Okay. So, Richard has just overheard this, and he would know that the Englishman that the magician is speaking of is himself, and that apparently Gaillard is there to meet a wealthy widow, and that if Richard himself makes a play for the widow, she will marry Richard. But Gaillard didn't know that this dude dressed like a domino standing right in front of him was Richard. Oh. Crazy. I'd been trying to see the person who sat in the palanquin. I had only once an opportunity of a tolerably steady peep. What I saw was singular. The oracle I was dressed, as I have said, very richly, in the Chinese fashion. He was a figure altogether on a larger scale than the interpreter who stood outside. The features seemed to me large and heavy, and the head was carried with a downward inclination. The eyes were closed, and the chin rested on the breast of his embroidered pelisse. The face seemed fixed, and the very image of apathy. Its character and pose seemed an exaggerated repetition of the immobility of the figure who communicated with the noisy outer world. This face looked blood red, but that was caused, I concluded, by the light entering through the red silk curtains. All this struck me almost at a glance. I had not many seconds in which to make my observation. The ground was now clear, and the Marquis said, "Go forward, my friend." I did so. When I reached the magician, as we called the man with the black wand, I glanced over my shoulder to see whether the Count was near. No, he was some yards behind, and he and the Marquis, whose curiosity seemed to be by this time satisfied, were now conversing generally upon some subject of course quite different. I was relieved, for the sage seemed to blurt out secrets in an unexpected way, and some of mine might not have amused the Count. I thought for a moment. I wished to test the prophet. A Church of England man was a rara avis in Paris. "What is my religion?" I asked. "A beautiful heresy," answered the oracle instantly. "A heresy? And pray, how is it named?" "Love." "Oh, then I suppose I am a polytheist, and love a great many?" "One." "But seriously," I asked, intending to turn the course of our colloquy a little out of an embarrassing channel, "have I ever learnt any words of devotion by heart?" "Yes." "Can you repeat them?" "Approach." I did, and lowered my ear. The man with the black wand closed the curtains and whispered, slowly and distinctly, these words, which I need scarcely tell you, I instantly recognized. "I may never see you more, and oh, that I could forget you. Go. Farewell. For God's sake, go." I started as I heard them. They were, you know,
the last words whispered to me by the Countess. Good heavens, how miraculous! Words heard most assuredly by no ear on earth but my own, and the ladies who uttered them till now. I looked at the impassive face of the spokesman with the wand. There was no trace of meaning, or even of a consciousness that the words he had uttered could possibly interest me. What do I most long for? I asked, scarcely knowing what I said. Paradise. And what prevents my reaching it? A black veil. Stronger and stronger. The answers seemed to me to indicate the minutest acquaintance with every detail of my little romance, of which not even the Marquis knew anything, and I, the questioner, masked and robed so that my own brother could not have known me. You said I loved someone. Am I loved in return? I asked. Try. I was speaking lower than before, and stood near the dark man with the beard, to prevent the necessity of his speaking in a loud key. Does anyone love me? I repeated. Secretly, was the answer. Much or little? I inquired. Too well. How long will that love last? Till the rose casts its leaves. The rose, another illusion. Then darkness, I sighed. But till then I live in light. The light of violet eyes. Okay, this is interesting because the Countess has violet eyes and gave him a rose. So, this guy's so insecure. Yeah, he's a young romantic, which makes him a bit of a creep, but love, if not a religion, as the oracle had just pronounced it, is at least a superstition. How it exalts the imagination, how it enervates the reason, how credulous it makes us. All this, which, in the case of another, I should have laughed at, most powerfully affected me in my own. It inflamed my ardor, and half crazed my brain, and even influenced my conduct. The spokesman of this wonderful trick, if trick it were, now waved me backward with his wand, and as I withdrew, my eyes still fixed upon the group, and this time encircled with an aura of mystery in my fancy, backing toward the ring of spectators, I saw him raise his hand suddenly, with a gesture of command, as a signal to the usher who carried the golden wand in front. The usher struck his wand on the ground, and in a shrill voice proclaimed, "The great Kung Fu is silent for an hour." Instantly, the bearers pulled down a sort of blind of bamboo, which descended with a sharp clatter, and secured it at the bottom. And then the man in the tall fez, with the black beard and wand, began a sort of dervish dance. In this, the men with the gold wands joined, and finally, in an outer ring, the bearers, the palanquin being the center of the circles described by these solemn dancers, whose pace, little by little, quickened, whose gestures grew sudden, strange, frantic, as the motion became swifter and swifter, until at length the whirl became so rapid that the dancers seemed to fly by with the speed of a mill wheel, and amid a general clapping of hands and universal wonder, these strange performers mingled with the crowd, and the exhibition, for the time at least, ended. The Marquis d'Armanville was standing not far away, looking on the ground, as one could judge by his attitude and musing. I approached, and he said, "The Count has just gone away to look for his wife. It is a pity she was not here to consult the prophet. It would have been amusing. I dare say to see how the Count bore it. Suppose we follow him. I have asked him to introduce you. With a beating heart, I accompanied the Marquis d'Amonville. What a piece of prose. Yeah. Alright, end of chapter. Oh my goodness. Let's see what happens next. Chapter 14. Mademoiselle de la Vallière. Oh, Nexus, thank you for the lurk. Thank you for the lurk. We wandered through the salon, the Marquis and I. It was no easy matter to find a friend in rooms so crowded. Stay here, said the Marquis. I have thought of a way of finding him. Besides, his jealousy may have warned him that there is no particular advantage to be gained by presenting you to his wife. I had better go and reason with him, as you seem to wish an introduction so very much. And this occurred in the room that is now called the Salon d'Apollon. The paintings remained in my memory, and my adventure of that evening was destined to occur there. I sat down upon a sofa and looked about me. 3 or 4 persons besides myself were seated on this roomy piece of gilded furniture. They were chatting, all very gaily. All except the person who sat next to me, and she was a lady. Hardly 2 feet interposed us. The lady sat apparently in a reverie. Nothing could be more graceful. She wore the costume perpetuated in Collignan's full-length portrait of Mademoiselle de la Vallière. It is, as you know, not only rich, but elegant. Her hair was powdered, but one could perceive that it was naturally a dark brown. One pretty little foot appeared. Could anything be more exquisite than her hand? It was extremely provoking that this lady wore her mask, and did not, as many did, hold it for a time in her hand. I was convinced that she was pretty. Availing myself of the privilege of a masquerade, a microcosm in which it is impossible, except by voice and illusion, to distinguish friend from foe, I spoke. "It is not easy, mademoiselle, to deceive me," I began. "So much the better for monsieur," answered the mask quietly. "I mean," I said, determined to tell my fib, "that beauty is a gift more difficult to conceal than mademoiselle supposes." "Yet monsieur has succeeded very well," she said, in the same sweet and careless tones. "I see the costume of this, the beautiful Mademoiselle de la Vallière, upon a form that surpasses her own. I raise my eyes, and I behold a mask, and yet I recognize the lady. Beauty is like that precious stone in the Arabian Nights, which emits, no matter how concealed, a light that betrays it." "I know the story," said the young lady. "The light betrayed it, not in the sun, but in darkness. Is there so little light in these rooms, monsieur, that a poor glowworm can show so brightly? I thought we were in a luminous atmosphere, wherever a certain countess moved." Here was an awkward speech. How was I to answer? Oh, this lady might be, as they say some ladies are, a lover of mischief, or an intimate of the Countess de Saint-Alyre. Cautiously, therefore, I inquired, "What countess?" "If you know me, you must know that she is my dearest friend. Is she not beautiful?" "Well, how can I answer? There are so many countesses." "Everyone who knows me knows who my best beloved friend is. You don't know me?" That is cruel. I can scarcely believe I am mistaken. With whom were you walking just now? She asked. A gentleman? A friend, I answered. I saw him, of course. A friend. But I think I know him, and should like to be certain. Is he not a certain Marquis? Here was another question that was extremely awkward. There are so many people here, and one may walk at one time with one, and at another with a different one, that an unscrupulous person has no difficulty in evading a simple question like mine. Know then, once for all, that nothing disgusts a person of spirit so much as suspicion. You, monsieur, are a gentleman of discretion. I shall respect you accordingly. Mademoiselle would despise me were I to violate a confidence. But you don't deceive me. You imitate your friend's diplomacy. I hate diplomacy. It means fraud and cowardice. Don't you think I know him? The gentleman with the cross of white ribbon on his breast? I know the Marquis d'Amonville perfectly. You see to what good purpose your ingenuity has been expended? To that conjecture I can answer neither yes nor no. You need not. But what was your motive in mortifying a lady? It is the last thing on earth I should do. You affected to know me, and you don't. Through caprice or listlessness or curiosity, you wish to converse not with a lady, but with a costume. You admired, and you pretend to mistake me for another. But who is quite perfect? Is truth any longer to be found on earth? Mademoiselle has formed a mistaken opinion of me. And you also of me. You find me less foolish than you supposed. I know perfectly whom you intend amusing with compliment and melancholy declamation, and whom, with that amiable purpose, you have been seeking. Tell me whom you mean, I entreated, upon one condition. What is that? That you will confess, if I name the lady. Oh, wait. Sorry, I think they formatted this incorrectly. Tell me who you mean, I entreated. Upon one condition. What is that? That you will confess, if I name the lady. You describe my object unfairly, I objected. I can't admit that I propose speaking to any lady in the tone you described. Well, I shan't insist on that. Only if I name the lady, you will promise to admit that I am right. Must I promise? Certainly not. There is no compulsion. But your promise is the only condition on which I will speak to you again. I hesitated for a moment. But how could she possibly tell? The Countess would scarcely have admitted this little romance to anyone. And the mask, in the La Valliere costume, could not possibly know who the masked domino beside her was. I consent, I said. I promise. You must promise on the honor of a gentleman. Well, I do, on the honor of a gentleman. Then, this lady is the Countess de Saint-Alyre. I was unspeakably surprised. I was disconcerted, but I remembered my promise and said, The Countess de Saint-Alyre is, unquestionably, the lady to whom I hoped for an introduction tonight. But I beg to assure you, also, on the honor of a gentleman, that she has not the faintest imaginable suspicion that I was seeking such an honor, nor, in all probability, does she remember that such a person as I exists. I had the honor to render her and the Count a trifling service, too trifling, I fear, to have earned more than an hour's recollection.
The world is not so ungrateful as you suppose. Or, if it be, there are nevertheless a few arts that redeem it. I can answer for the Countess de Saint-Elier. She never forgets a kindness. She does not show all she feels, for she is unhappy and cannot.
Unhappy? I feared indeed that might be. But for all the rest that you are good enough to suppose, it is but a flattering dream.
I told you, I am the Countess's friend, and being so, I must know something of her character. Also, there are confidences between us, and I may know more than you think of those trifling services of which you suppose the recollection is so transitory.
I was becoming more and more interested. I was as wicked as other young men, and the heinousness of such a pursuit was as nothing, now that self-love and all the passions that mingle in such a romance were roused. The image of the beautiful Countess had now again quite superseded the pretty counterpart of La Valliere, who was before me. I would have given a great deal to hear, in solemn earnest, that she did remember the champion who, for her sake, had thrown himself before the saber of an enraged dragoon, with only a cudgel in his hand, and conquered. "You say the Countess is unhappy," said I. "What causes her unhappiness?"
"Oh, many things. Her husband is old, jealous, and tyrannical. Is that not enough? Even when relieved from his society, she is lonely."
"But you are her friend," I suggested.
"And you think one friend enough?" she answered. "She has one alone to whom she can open her heart."
"Is there room for another friend?"
"Try."
"How can I find a way?"
"She will aid you."
"How?"
She answered by a question. "Have you secured rooms in either of the Hôtel Versailles?"
"No, I could not. I'm lodged in the Dragon Volant, which stands at the verge of the grounds of the Château de la Cauque."
"Oh, that is better still. I need not ask if you have courage for such an aventure. I need not ask if you are a man of honor. A lady may trust herself to you and fear nothing. There are few men to whom the interview, such as I shall arrange, could be granted with safety. You shall meet her at 2 o'clock this morning in the park of the Château de la Cauque. What room do you occupy in the Dragon Volant?"
I was amazed at the audacity and decision of this girl. Was she, as we say in England, hoaxing me? "I can describe that accurately," said I. "As I look from the rear of the house, in which my apartment is, I am at the extreme right, next the angle, and one pair of stairs out from the hall."
"Very well. You must have observed, if you looked into the park, 2 or 3 clumps of chestnut and lime trees, growing so close together as to form a small grove. You must return to your hotel, change your dress, and, preserving a scrupulous secrecy as to why or where you go, leave the Dragon Volant and climb the park wall unseen. You will easily recognize the grove I have mentioned. There you will meet the Countess, who will grant you an audience of a few minutes, who will expect the most scrupulous reserve on your part, and who will explain to you in a few words a great deal which I could not so well tell you here."
I cannot describe the feeling with which I heard these words. I was astounded. Doubt succeeded. I could not believe these agitating words. Mademoiselle will believe that if I only dared assure myself that so great a happiness and honor were really intended for me, my gratitude would be as lasting as my life. But how dare I believe that Mademoiselle does not speak, rather from her own sympathy or goodness than from a certainty that the Countess de Saint-Elier would concede so great an honor. Monsieur believes either that I am not, as I pretend to be, in the secret which he hitherto supposed to be shared by no one but the Countess and himself, or else that I am cruelly mystifying him, that I am in her confidence, I swear, by all that is dear in a whispered farewell, by the last companion of this flower. And she took for a moment in her fingers the nodding head of a white rosebud that was nestled in her bouquet. By my own good star, and hers, or shall I call it our belle étoile? Have I said enough? Enough, I repeated. More than enough. 1,000 thanks. And being thus in her confidence, I am clearly her friend. And being a friend, would it be friendly to use her dear name so? And all for sake of practicing a vulgar trick upon you, a stranger? Mademoiselle will forgive me. Remember how very precious is the hope of seeing and speaking to the Countess. Is it wonderful, then, that I should falter in my belief? You have convinced me, however, and will forgive my hesitation. You will be at the place I have described, then, at 2 o'clock? Assuredly, I answered. And Monsieur, I know, will not fail through fear. No, he need not assure me. His courage is already proved. No danger in such a case will be unwelcome to me. Had you not better go now, Monsieur, and rejoin your friend? Well, I promised to wait here for my friend's return. The Count de Saint-Elier said that he intended to introduce me to the Countess. And Monsieur is so simple as to believe him. Why should I not? Because he is jealous and cunning. You will see. He will never introduce you to his wife. He will come here and say he cannot find her and promise another time. Well, I think I see him approaching with my friend. No, there is no lady with him. I told you so. You will wait a long time for that happiness, if it is never to reach you except through his hands. In the meantime, you had better not let him see you so near me. He will suspect that we have been talking of his wife, and that will whet his jealousy and his vigilance. I thanked my unknown friend in the... Come on, Richard, like, this is obviously the Countess, right? Like, this is obviously the Countess, right? Damn. My unknown friend. I thanked my unknown friend in the mask, and withdrawing a few steps came by a little circumbendibus upon the flank of the Count. What is circumbendibus and why is it in quotation marks? They have it in quotation. An indirect or roundabout course, especially in writing or speaking. Okay. And withdrawing a few steps came by a little circumbendibus upon the flank of the Count. I smiled under my mask as he assured me that the Duchesse de la Roquem had changed her place and taken the Countess with her, but he hoped at some very early time to have an opportunity of enabling her to make my acquaintance. New word hype. Heck yeah. We love learning new words. I avoided the Marquis d'Armonville, who was following the Count. I was afraid he might propose accompanying me home, and had no wish to be forced to make an explanation. I lost myself quickly, therefore, in the crowd, and moved as rapidly as it would allow me toward the Galerie des Glaces, which lay in the direction opposite to that in which I saw the Count and my friend, the Marquis, moving. End of chapter. Okay. Interesting. So we don't know for sure. My money's on that being the Countess that he just spoke to. She knows that her husband is dressed the same as the Marquis. And she knows that her husband and the Marquis and the young Englishman were all staying at the same inn, and that the young Englishman and the Marquis had made acquaintances and could probably put that together. And then there's the fact that even though they're all speaking in French, and Richard is fluent in French, but he probably still would have some sort of accent, right? Yeah. Okay. What do we do? Do we read another one? How are we feeling, guys? How are we feeling? Or is that a good place to pause? Let me see. Because we are coming to 3 hours total. That's the stream length on Twitch so far. I know, less time so far on YouTube, but how are we feeling? Because I feel like there is maybe like a natural narrative pause there. How's croissant? Yeah, like I'm kind of stiff and sore, and I might be able to get through one more chapter, but just like looking at the tone of this yeah, it might be a good place to pause the reading for the night. And yeah, okay, so let's kind of, do our little YouTube outro. So the stream will be continuing for a little while more over on Twitch. Hi, Consinity. Hello. That's okay. You can scream hello. Generally, we try to do a little more just ASMR and just hanging out, soft-spoken chit-chat and such. Sometimes we do continue talking about the book, but not necessarily. I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break, but thank you to everyone who chose to watch on YouTube, or even have the YouTube window open as a second window. And what did you miss? Hi, bath salts. I did not forget the YouTube. Yeah. I figured bath salts. Yeah. Genuinely, thank you so much. That's so helpful. Yep. So the plan is to keep this going forward. My normal reading schedule is on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sunday nights. Now I do a whole stream over on Twitch, which includes cozy chit chat and some traditional ASMR and like triggers, and also this reading. And I will be, for the reading portion, be going live on the YouTube side. So if you've been enjoying this, if you somehow find this VOD after the fact, would really appreciate it if you subscribe so you can be alerted for when I read next, which should be on Tuesday night. More of this story. And yeah, if you like the video, comment. That would be amazing. We are trying to get the YouTube off the ground. This is a new endeavor, and yeah, so really appreciate it. If you want to hang out for a little bit more. Sean just posted the link to my Twitch channel, so feel free to come over there and hang out for a little bit more. It probably won't be a long stream tonight. Probably not more than another hour. Yeah. Alright, so we are going to say goodbye to YouTube, but I'll keep going on Twitch. Alright, thank you, YouTube.